Betsy, it looks like I was able to start the recording myself, so you don't have to worry about it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello there.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. We will get started in just a few minutes. All right. Betsy, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today for our first webinar in the iCollins CTL online teaching series. This spring, I'm Dr. Allison Boyer. I'm director of the Center for Teaching and Learning here at Collin, and I am thrilled that we have Dr. Betsy Brody with us today. She's an iCollins professor, and she is going to share some of her expertise and insights on student feedback in the online environment. So Betsy, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you so much for giving me this chance to see some colleagues and old friends in the webinar, and also to talk about this issue. I should introduce myself first. I know many of you, but for those of you who I don't know yet, my name is Betsy Brody. I've been at Collin since 2002. I teach political science or government, depending on what you want to call it. And I've been teaching online for almost the entire time that I've been at Collin. There may have been a couple of years early on that it was a different model, but so I've kind of seen the evolution, and I'm really pleased to have moved to the iCollin virtual campus when it opened, and happy to see so many of my iCollin colleagues here in this webinar as well. So I want to start out by just saying that I'm not an expert by any means on this topic, but when I had the opportunity to think about a topic I'd like to do a talk about. This is one that I chose because I spend so much of my time doing it, and I wanted to have an opportunity to stop and reflect and think about ways that, that I could be doing it better, why I'm doing it, and, just sort of have this chance for reflection. And also in the webinar context, to have a chance to exchange ideas. I know especially with COVID, many of us, even people who prefer to teach in the classroom, have, were forced into teaching online, to deal with the pandemic. And so I think there's a lot of knowledge out there that we've all been so busy that we haven't had a chance to share. So about things that work and things that didn't so well, or how we might want to do things differently. So I'll just give you that caveat that I'm not an expert, but I do want to stop and think about why we do what we do and how we might be able to do it better in terms of feedback. So let me move to my next slide here. And just kind of give you a brief overview before we get started of sort of where what I've got planned in this talk. So first of all, the first part, I just wanted to sort of share a little bit with everybody, if you're willing to share, about why do we give feedback? So not just in the online environment, but why do we give feedback in general in the classroom, in a face-to-face class, in an online classroom, or just in general? What is the use of that? And then moving on, I wanted to think about that a little bit more deeply, consider some ways of structuring our thinking about quality feedback, what makes it useful, what makes it worthwhile, since we spend so much time doing it. Look at a model for good feedback, and then finally at the end to give you and share some tools that we have at our disposal, both within Canvas and without, to kind of make things easier for us, since we teach so many students and want to make sure that we're giving them great feedback. So if people are comfortable sharing in the chat an answer to this question, why do we give feedback? And again, not just online, but even face-to-face. What is the purpose in your view when you're thinking about your classroom of giving feedback? So seeing lots of great answers, part of the learning process, clearing misconceptions, encouraging points for improvement, so students better understand how they did and how they can improve and know what they did well. And these are all, exactly the reasons why I too try to give great feedback, or at least some feedback. And I'm constantly trying to improve and find ways to balance what our students, meet them where they are and sort of give them a sense of what they did well, motivate them to do better, and a roadmap. I think another thing to think about, though, is stepping back before we even get to the point of giving feedback, of making sure that our courses are structured in ways that promote and facilitate improvement. So even in talking about this topic, like I said, I chose the topic because I wanted to get better at it. I wanted to stop and think about it and consider that. So thank you for sharing all those ideas in the chat. And hopefully you guys can chime in and share your thoughts on what I'm presenting here. So as all of you know, because of your answers that you provided in the chat, feedback is oftentimes as valuable as a lecture or even grades. So when you think about feedback as part of your course structure and how you set up your course in the first place, when you build it in there as part of the learning process, it can become, as this quote says, intertwined and create a new path for teaching and learning. I want to step back here again and talk about course structure. So my course, I kind of think about when I'm setting it up as sort of that I'm hosting a dinner party, right, or a birthday party or something like that. And so just like for those of you who like to entertain, I do, and I think it's a lot of fun to think about, what it's going to be like when people get there. What is it going to feel like when they walk in the door? Do I have a special, something to give them as they walk in the door? Is there, information that they need, like put your coats here or whatever? And then what is the whole rest of the rest of the party going to be like? What are we going to eat? How are we going to spend our time? Are people going to be able to talk to each other? So when I lay out my course, the feedback piece of it, I think, is a really important thing that I think about from the beginning. So in as much as I think about assignments or the rubrics and things like that, that they're going to deliver their grade. I also think about sort of the feeling, right? Like what kind of interaction can we have as instructor and student, as students and students, as instructor and the whole class, to sort of keep that path going and to help the students learn the material in different ways, right? To approach it from different ways. Feedback, the role that it can play in there is to give students an opportunity to engage much more deeply in the content itself and in the process. So having a sort of continual conversation, maybe even, in the online environment, I think of it sometimes as like being a really dedicated pen pal, right, to the students in terms of like asking a question in the feedback and then having, they often will respond with an answer. So like, oh, your answer made me think about this and this. What do you think about this other issue? And then they, they will often answer back, even though that's the assignment is long over and they've already received their grade. So being part of the process and engaging more deeply with the content. As many of you said in the answer to the question, why give feedback? Why do we give feedback? It can also be a really good source of motivation. As this quote says, feedback provides evidence about progress and achievement rather than high stakes summative assessment tasks where evidence is only about success or failure. So I think myself as a student, and I've attended much professional development over the past 20 years of my career. Every time I am a student, I reflect on the fact that I don't know what I don't know. Right. So I think our students are in the same situation in that, when they get a B, right, it's yay, or, oh no, that's not what I wanted. But that B doesn't give a lot of information about the things that they don't know, the bigger picture, the path. And I think that it's very motivating to have an instructor be able to tell you kind of where you're at in and expand your view of what the big picture is. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions or comments that emerged in the chat. No, okay. Then we'll just move on here. And this is, it looks like a lot, but I think it's a pretty useful way of thinking about feedback. I'm just going to focus in on the part where I've got the red arrow there, because I think it's probably a whole other webinar to go through sort of the philosophy and thinking behind all of these aspects of this model. But this is a model of feedback that, and I'll just draw your attention to this part where it says, the purpose and teachers. So what teachers can do to reduce the discrepancy. So if you think about the purpose of feedback as being to reduce discrepancies between what they understand and the desired goal, I think that that's kind of what I was just saying, like we know what our goal is for them, by creating our learning outcomes and thinking about what we want the students to get out of an assignment. And one way that we can reduce that discrepancy between where they're at and where we want them to be is by giving useful, timely, and substantive feedback. So for thinking about feedback, this model I think is really useful because it's simple. Thinking about effective feedback that can answer 3 questions. Where am I going? In other words, what are the goals? How am I going? Right, that's the actual feedback. How did they do on this assignment? And where to next? Where does this fit in to the bigger picture of the skills or mastery of content that that we're hoping for from our students. So again, I'm constantly trying to adapt and improve the sort of the nature of the feedback. I mean, sometimes I am absolutely guilty of saying just, good job, a little pat on the back, which I tell them not to do when they're giving each other feedback, but sometimes that just happens. But I think this is a good sort of aspirational goal to say, where am I going, right? So this assignment was meant to blank, blank, and blank. How am I going? In this assignment, you did well by specifically, showing your mastery of these things, or you're showing using these skills. And where to next time, you could improve by, going deeper in your analysis, providing more examples, something specific. And I think that reminds me of another thing I wanted to say earlier, which is when designing your course, and trying to fit in where the feedback would be most useful or how it might be most useful. Everybody's different, and it's really kind of a matter of personal taste. But for me, and just sort of I think maybe what I preferred as a student, and I just hope that they don't mind in my classes, is we're using sort of the same format to work on different topics and different content. In other words, there's really not very many surprises in the structure of my course, right? There's a weekly quiz type thing with an adaptive learning that is, useful and kind of low stakes for them. And then there's a discussion, and they make a video every week, a short video about a topic. So there's no like surprise assignment. Everything is laid out from the beginning. It's very predictable. So my philosophy behind doing that is that, yeah, it might be repetitive and it might be boring on some level, but also it gives me the opportunity to help them get better at the sort of soft skills that the discussions and the making of the video build, right? So I can say, so when I say you could improve next time by doing X, Y, or Z, I'm specifically talking about a next time that lands the following week, right? So I feel in my case, and the type of topics that my class covers, that's accomplishes two goals. They're grappling with the content, and also they're getting an opportunity to get feedback that they can immediately use the following week on a similar assignment that's on a different topic. So that's sort of my philosophy behind that. Move forward here and think about the sort of nuts and bolts of feedback. So effective feedback, whether it's in the form of grades or comments, must give a student a sense of where they are and what they need to do to improve. So to me, I try to be timely with my feedback, and that is why I spend most of my time just grading and trying to get it done before the next thing like that they have to do again, so that they can use and improve whatever I say to do better on the next assignment. Substantive, like I said, when we were looking at that model, to be able to say, to connect the goals of that particular assignment in a concrete way for the students, and to show them, okay, you did this well, specifically, and then finally actionable. What can they do to improve? Specifically, what can they do to improve next time? So I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks about this, and are there other aspects of good feedback that that you really focus on in your work, grading and responding to students, besides being trying to be timely, and it's often very difficult to get it done. in time for everybody for the next time. Substantive, what are some ways that you all try to give substantive feedback, and finally actionable, and are there other things that you think about? Yeah, Jill, absolutely. Personalized feedback. And that's exactly, like, to keep with my birthday party or dinner party metaphor. I really try and do that so that it seems like an ongoing conversation with them, that they're, especially when we're online, it's hard to build that personal connection. And I think that feedback is a really useful tool for that. And definitely there are some ways to make it easier for you to give that personalized feedback, but also not spend all of your time on it. So see, there's some other things in the chat. Yes, Ryan, I try to give both positive feedback and constructive criticism. Hadn't thought of asking questions. It depends on if you want to have that conversation or not. Sometimes the topics are especially teaching government, it can maybe be a thing you don't want to talk about, but I try to keep the door open anyway. Charles says, at any day or week during my class, students can refer to a class calendar that displays total points they should have achieved. Yeah, absolutely. I think that timeliness is both motivating and helps them to gauge, how they can do better, or, if they're doing great and keep on doing what they're doing. Yeah, Tiffany, about feeling included and connected. Courtney, whenever possible, likes to tell them something they did well, not just those areas that need improvement, even if it's a more general. This was a good start. Absolutely. I think just as a human, I'd like to hear a little bit of good news, even if I'm getting some bad news. So thank you all for sharing those thoughts. Here, I'm going to move myself over here. So I know that many of you know about a lot of these things. I just thought it would be useful to gather them all in one place and think about, in terms of instructor feedback, two different paths: individual feedback, of course, and then summary feedback, and sort of the pros and cons and reasons to do each, and then also to look at some specific technological tools that can help you do this without, again, spending all of your time, reinventing the wheel from semester to semester, and being able to build those connections with students, help them improve what they're doing, and also, acknowledge the fact that you're giving kind of, many of the same notes, because there are a lot of common misconceptions and common areas of improvement for students. So I'll go into all of these specifically, and I have sort of screenshots and things like that to help help you maybe think about how difficult it would be to use any of these tools, or how easy. But the Canvas comment library, using voice notes within Canvas to give feedback, using video notes if that's something you're interested in. Ways to use a Google Doc. This is not rocket science, but it is, I found it to be very helpful to sort of accumulate a library of comments and feedback that I often give. A tool that I think many of you probably know about, Annotate Pro, which is a Chrome extension that I've also found to be pretty useful. And then the idea of summary feedback, whether it's video, audio, or through an email announcement. So we'll just get into a little bit more of these tools. So this is, and the ELC has really great videos and tutorials on how to do all of this. So I didn't want to overwhelm anybody, especially because I think a lot of you already know how to use these things. But if you need a further resource beyond my screenshots, definitely check the ELC's library of tutorials, and that kind of lays it out. So this is the Canvas comment library. So you can, when you're in SpeedGrader, you'll see this little like caption box kind of thing. And you can click on that and then go in there and paste or type in comments as you're grading an assignment. I will say I haven't used the Canvas comment library for a long time because I moved on to something better. But this is these aren't, I mean, you can see my comments here are not particularly super useful, all of them, like just great job. You can use them additively though, so you could click on great job and then move on and click on some other, so if you find yourself giving a lot of the same comments, you can use the Canvas comment library. And you can edit these and change them as needed. The sort of pros and cons of this, I think one of the biggest pros, I think, is that it's right there in Canvas and you don't have to sort of do anything else. One con, and maybe, I just am not advanced enough to know how to do this. It just, they're all your comments are in the same place, right? So they're not divided assignment by assignment. So I, again, with the, weekly 2 assignments that I'm grading and trying to provide feedback, that was a little tedious for me. It was hard for me to locate the exact, comment that I wanted, even though you can search, like when you start to write in this right below here, when you start to type something, it'll pull up everything that has has that phrase in it. So that, is useful, but, again, if you're giving sort of the same type of feedback, it'll pull up far more than maybe you want. Now, if this is if you just want to reserve it for one big assignment and have all of those things just at your fingertips in the Canvas library, that could be a useful way to use that without running into that problem. But it is really great that it's right in Canvas. It's right there in your speed grader, and you can put as much or as little in there as you want. So were there any questions on the Canvas comment library? Great. Okay. Okay, let me clear this up a little bit. Okay, so then this is, again, in Canvas still, an opportunity to give voice or video notes. So here's, oops, sorry. Go back. Here's how you do this. Again, this is right in your Canvas speed grader. You can just click on this where this first red arrow is, that little like play button looking thing, and you can record a voice note, or you can also record, you have the opportunity to do a video note. You can do in real time video notes, like just record it as you're as you're doing that grade, or you can have sort of a bank of media that you've already recorded, and just sort of upload those and send those to the students. So that, again, really useful if that's your personal style, that you find that you're more efficient, or are able to sort of create a better connection on video or through voice only. It does take time, right? So you think about doing that for every student that you're grading. If that's the case, then that's it's going to take a little time to both record it and upload and send it, and also then it's very unlikely that you would be able to use it again, right? Because it's just for that one student. So on the other hand, it's students, kind of like it if if they open it and listen to it and read or watch your video, they like it, and it feels like you're talking to them directly and you're giving them specific feedback about the assignment that was hopefully still fresh in their mind, so they can know more about what they could have done differently or better. But I think like all feedback that we put out there in the universe, it's hard to know if people, opened it, right? If they listened to it or read it or watched your video. So, and when you're thinking about your time investment, that may be something to factor in there as well. Whether it's your personal style or how much time you want to invest in it, or if these are things that you can send more generally to the class as a summary kind of feedback. Any questions there? Okay. Then here, Google Doc, here are some examples. So at some point I decided to just, every time I wrote a comment to anybody for a particular assignment, to paste it into a Google Doc. I know a lot of my colleagues in my department anyway also have collected their comments in that way and sort of just created a library of comments, especially ones that, sort of the type of feedback that you have to give over and over again. So this is just a random, group of comments on an assignment about the about privatizing prisons. And so you can see, this is a topic that we look at in talking about the bureaucracy in my American government class. So looking at several articles and videos about private prisons and thinking about it in terms of the pros and cons. And they have an assignment in which they articulate the arguments for and against privatizing prisons in the context of the things that we've studied that week about the bureaucracy and the pros and cons and the sort of the structure of the bureaucracy. So, a lot of the same comments, I find myself giving the same comments over and over again. So these are some, and I will say that with it being, or talking about giving personal feedback, these, I just think of them as sort of a framework, right? So like I'm collecting them and whatever, but then when I paste them in and I'm giving this type, let's say if I were to use this, this top one with a student, when I put it into SpeedGrader, I enhance that, right? So I think of it sort of as a structure, right? Like, okay, like basically this is, these are some things that came up in the student's post or submission, and I'm going to use this comment from my Google Doc as a framework or a backbone to give them more personal feedback. So what I would do is actually personalize to that student, the comment that's here. And so like, for example, probably no other student besides the first one for whom I wrote this comment, use these exact words. So obviously I would change that and address, the current student and what they actually wrote and enhance this structure of a comment that I have in my Google Doc that I've saved. So, so that's pretty useful, but again, can be time consuming to find, it might sometimes just be easier to type a comment, feedback anew. This, I guess, fourth example here, this comes up not very often. So like if somebody were to in a future, discussion or video bring up the post office, I think, I would remember, oh yeah, like I did write a comment about the post office and sort of how it fits into this discussion. Once before, maybe I can just go look at that and see if, if it applies in this case. So, so those are some, just some uses that, Google Doc is a simple way without getting bogged down in a new system or learning anything, to just sort of to keep your work, right? Like you're doing this work by creating this feedback. It might be useful to you in the future. And just sort of keeping a log of, and also knowing these are some patterns in each of these assignments, areas where students often misunderstand, or where they often understand really well, and maybe for rethinking the assignment in the future, it's really useful feedback for me to say, oh, I think I could push students even further by asking, some different questions or including some different resources on this topic. So I think, if you're writing the comments anyway, it's probably, not a, excessive burden to save them just for yourself, even if you never use them again, for other students, to sort of keep track of your work and think about ways that you could improve in the future. Are there any questions on this? Okay, move on then. So this tool is Annotate Pro. It is a Chrome extension, and it I really like it. It's there's a free version, and then there's, if you decide you like it, there's a version that you can pay like $24 a year to use. And that gives you the option to sort of do this color coding and organizing that you can see in my screenshot here. So this is where, if you have been keeping a Word document or a Google Doc of all of your comments, it can come in pretty handy. So again, it's a Chrome extension, so you need to be grading using the Chrome browser. You pull up Canvas, it's integrated directly into Chrome, so not, but it goes right into Canvas. So you can be sitting here grading, and then your comments that you've cataloged or and in my case color coded will be over here on the side, and you just click on them, and they click on whichever one, and it appears in your SpeedGrader comment area. You can't see this because it's a screenshot, but when you're actually in the browser, when you scroll over or mouse over these comments that you're the one that's inputted them, you can see the whole thing there. So you don't have to just rely on these little shorthands that are the comment labels. When you scroll over it, the whole comment pops up. And again, when you click on it, it'll show up in your SpeedGrader as a comment specifically for the student. And as I said before with the Google Doc, I use that as sort of just a backbone structure for the feedback that I'm giving them. So while I might click on, this, COVID button and the comment about how this comment relates to, how this person's discussion relates to COVID might come up, I would then go in there and enhance that and personalize it for this particular student. So it saves a lot of time in sort of hunting for in the Google Doc, or reinventing the wheel and retyping the same thing 100 times. But it's I think for me, the $24 was worth it for the year because that enables you to do the color coding. So like you can see here, the red ones are when I'm giving, like not happy news, like plagiarism, or, if they needed to paraphrase better, or, go for more depth. So I can quickly identify those, and then again, personalize that feedback to, what they actually plagiarized or where they could have paraphrased better. And I feel like it provides for a much more robust feedback, personalized feedback, and yet does not take a whole lot of time in reinventing or retyping or searching for the comments. So it wouldn't be right if I didn't tell you that there is a little bit of a learning curve on this. So it's a great tool, but it is not one that I think that I would recommend just sort of trying to deploy mid-semester. In order to, you can create your libraries in Annotate Pro by just typing in, as you go. That's a thing you can do. But I think probably the most like bang for your buck in terms of creating these libraries for yourself and color coding them, and and being able to use them in ways that make your life better and give your students really high quality feedback would be to go the route of uploading the library as an Excel CSV file. So that takes time, and it helps if you already have your Word document or Google Doc of commonly given feedback. Those can be the basis for creating your Excel file, cleaning that up, and then uploading it into Annotate Pro to be coded and deployed as a backbone for your personalized feedback. So it's a really good tool, maybe one that I would recommend exploring over the summer, or after you have organized your Google Doc or Word document. Were there questions? Looks like there's a question maybe. Yes, exactly. So this is something that you can do definitely during using Word and keyboard shortcuts. Michelle says, I use this, but categorize them by grading rubric, label the feedback by course name and number. Wonder if that's for the Canvas. So yeah, I mean, there's again down to personalized, like, personal taste, right? If this is something that seems like it's worth the investment to you, I think it can be really, really useful and time saving, and also give students great and personalized feedback. On the other hand, if you've got your system, or if you prefer to just to give voice notes, or if the Canvas library kind of comment library captures everything, it's I don't know if I would use this tool if I only had like 5 discussions per class for course semester, for example, right? I find it useful because I have so many, and this gives me a way to really be able to quickly and personally respond to every student's post. So that's where that is. Then the next category I wanted to talk about is summary feedback. So I know, and several of you have already said this in the chat, it's something that a lot of us do, whether it's through a mass announcement after an assignment, after you've graded assignment, saying, oh, you guys did great on this. Here are some common themes of misunderstanding. These are some areas where all of us could improve in the future. Or here's an extension of this, like we talked about this issue, and here it popped up in current events. Let's keep on thinking about these issues. So summary feedback can be really useful, both to clear up misunderstanding of concepts, and then also to make students feel less isolated, right? In your individual feedback, they may, thought, well, like, oh, I really messed that up, or I really misunderstood that concept. But by sending summary feedback, it puts them in the category of, many of you misunderstood, or didn't catch this aspect of this concept. I wanted to draw this to your attention. Makes them feel less isolated, and also helps with motivation, right? Like I'm not too far off track in this class. So tools for that would be, as I said before, announcements, class email, video. I make a lot of videos, sort of just if I'm telling everybody the same thing, and at the same time, that's a way that I can sort of wrap it up and create that connection again. And then of course, just an audio note is useful as well. Pros and cons, I think we're all pretty clear on that. On the video and the audio, I think time aspect of that is you want to make sure, well, of course, making the video takes time, and then you want to make sure it's accessible. So adding the captions and checking over them is a time investment, but you definitely want to make sure you're making sure that the feedback is available to all of your students. So just something to think about. Pros and cons. Should students in a class be given summary information about class completions? Is the question. So I think what you're asking is about specific student information. So I kind of, when I do that, keep it very general, right? Like just, never calling out one student, or I don't even, I know some people do this, but I don't even post or paste students, even if it's really good. Like I don't do that either. To, say like, here's an example of a really great discussion post. I kind of just don't want that out there. They could all see it because they were all in the discussion. So I just want to make sure I understood the question. So my class is structured, the question is not specific students, but about the entire class after the semester. So I don't do that about at the end of the semester. This is just me, and I know, please chime in, anybody who has other ways of doing this. My class is very much structured around a weekly schedule. Every single week is a different topic and a different set of concepts that we're tackling in all different ways. So, not every week, but on weeks where, the work that they've turned in makes it seem like it would be a good idea. at the end of the week, I might give some kind of summary feedback about, this is what we talked about last week. In my case, most of the time it is less about clearing up misconceptions and more about extending the conversation, right? So much of the stuff that that we teach in a government class is like in the news every single week in some way that wasn't really what we looked at, right? Because I set up the course far in advance. So we might be, for example, talking about like I said earlier, the bureaucracy, right? That's our concept. And we're looking at, that discussion is about privatizing prisons, but sometime in that week that we were talking about it, there might be, an issue dealing with the Department of Education or the VA or something like that. And so I might want to, to say, hey, we talked about privatizing prisons last week in terms of thinking about reforms for the bureaucracy, but look here, right in today's newspaper, there's an article about, the red tape at the VA. What does that make you think about? So, kind of to bring it more into current events sometimes for the students makes it more engaging. And of course, because we set our classes up so early, can't anticipate everything. So for me, the summary feedback is usually extending the conversation. I hope that helps there. The last thing that I wanted to bring up is how useful it is for them to have peer feedback. So far we've been talking a lot about instructor feedback, both, tools to, why do we do it, and tools to help make it more meaningful and accessible for you as an instructor to give high quality feedback to your students on a regular basis. But I think another really good tool is to have them provide feedback for each other. Many of us, probably most of us, use discussions, and that is a form of feedback, right? Especially if you have them interacting with each other. It is part of, at least in my class, one of the skills I want them to leave with, the ability to have, an informed, intelligent, civil conversation about difficult issues that people disagree on. So the discussions are very intentionally used for them to build those soft skills that will be useful for them and transferable into other areas of their life, right? So, and when you get that kind of feedback from your peers, it lives in a different space than where your instructor feedback might live, right? So to say, oh, I'm interacting with a classmate using the content that we studied this week and asking questions and getting feedback from them. Oh, like you said that really clearly. Now I understand. I mean, like we've all seen it in our class discussions, right? When a student says to another student, I really liked your post. I didn't understand when I did my own. I didn't understand really fully, but when you said this, it really made sense to me. So I think that's really useful feedback. And, it may not be measured, in our course evaluations or things like that. But I think for the larger goal of, of our mission of sending informed citizens who are capable of interacting with each other and providing feedback, whether it's to their own kids or to their coworkers, that's a useful skill. And I'm I think that we help them by modeling, giving good feedback, and also setting the table so that they give each other the opportunity to build those skills in the class. Another tool that I use is peer review, and then this perusal. I think many of you probably use. I don't use it, but I wanted to just go over those two options finally here as well. So this is a peer review, which is built into Canvas. I'm sure that many of you already use it. So sorry if I'm telling you things that you already know. So in my class, they do a lab assignment in which their one big project is they watch and listen to an oral history interview of a civil rights activist, and they get to choose who from the collection that they, so on whatever they're interested in, whoever they're interested in. They do a presentation that has they create the video, and then there's very specific instructions about, what each slide should contain, in terms of you need to have a slide that has this, a slide that has this, and so on. So everybody is very clear about what the assignment instructions are and the assignment expectations are. Then they do a voiceover of their PowerPoint. Some of them are, their little pictures in the screen. Some of, most of them choose not to be on screen, and it's not required at all to be on screen. They do their voiceover, and then we have what I call the digital conference. So after the assignment deadline has passed, they are each assigned randomly to peers presentations that they are to view and fill out the same rubric that I use when I'm grading that, and also to answer these specific questions. And so I send them all of those instructions in advance, how to access the presentations, when to expect the presentations to be assigned to them, specifically the type of feedback that I'm expecting them to give each other, and these specific questions that they need to address. About 85% of the people in every class are able to follow all of those instructions and provide feedback in the exact format that they're asked to do so. But even people who don't exactly follow the instructions, like you can see over here, somebody did it in the comment section, but they still manage to give feedback. So again, it's called a digital conference, and we've all experienced at conferences some of the people in our audiences providing more helpful or less helpful feedback. So I guess it's just like a normal conference. But anyway, I think this has been a really nice part of every course. They've been kind of do this at the end, near the end of the semester. So they've been interacting with each other already quite a bit in the discussion boards and things like that. This assignment, almost everybody chooses a different video to watch. So we all get to learn about each other's civil rights activist from listening to the presentations of our assigned peer reviews. And then they get, not just my feedback, which includes the grade, but also really, oftentimes very generous and kind feedback from their classmates. And it's a win because every student then gets to hear 3 stories and hear about 3 stories and also practice those skills of saying, okay, this was a good presentation, but it would have been improved by this, or I wanted to hear more about this. So that's been really nice and rewarding. The way you set this up, again, I know many of you already know this, is when you're setting up your assignment, there's an edit button, and then you can go over here where on the right and how to assign peer reviews. You set up automatically or manually if you want to, to customize that further. And then, set the due date, however many you want them to do. And then whenever the assignment deadline is passed, they can see that. And then you can go in where I've highlighted in green here to peer reviews and see what they've written for each other. So that has been a really useful tool for me in my classes. And I think the students really enjoy, after they've worked so hard on their video, on their presentation, I think they enjoy knowing that more than one person watched it and also getting the specific feedback. So here, this final tool that I wanted to go over is Perusall. This is I think an API that you can integrate into your Canvas course. It allows for sort of collaborative annotation. Again, I have not used it because I get really nervous about so the thing is it auto grades. That's the real appeal of this. So there's an auto grading aspect to this. So you can set the parameters, what you want, what type of interaction you want to reward. And how many times you want them to interact. They can, and so they annotate. So it's like an ongoing conversation between your class. You can be part of it as well. And you can be very specific about what you want them to comment on and create little tags like comment, please comment on this, or what do you think about this? And people who use it love it and swear by it. So they have some good tutorials on their website. And I know we have a colleague who has done a presentation on how to set it up as well. And I think that may be in the either CTL or ELC library. That is super useful if that fits sort of the goals and your assignment outcomes that you're looking for. Very useful. And every summer, I think this is a summer that I'll implement it, and I still have not yet. So if anybody else uses it and wants to chime in, please. Yes, exactly. Rachel did a great webinar last year on it, and I was very fired up and ready to do it, and then just did not follow through on that. So these are some of the articles that I cited and looked at in prepping for this. And thank you again for coming, and look forward to any feedback that you might have to offer me on any of the things that we've talked about today.
Thank you so much, Betsy.
You're welcome.
We still have a few minutes left if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask while we're here. If not, I did record the session, so if you'd like to revisit anything, I will be posting a link to the recording on the CTL recordings page, probably sometime later today or tomorrow.
All right, thank you so much for setting this up, and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you so much.